Support for this podcast is brought to you by the organization Americans for Clean Energy and from generous contributions from viewers like you. Thank you.
Hello, and welcome to Thought for Your Thoughts. I'm your host, Jack Spear. Are renewable resources only a detriment to human society? Today on Thought for Your Thoughts, we have several top professors here to discuss the pros and cons of renewable energy. Hello, listeners. Today we discuss the pros and cons of renewable resources and their impact on the environment around them. Our first guest is a world-renowned tenured professor of environmental studies at Stanford University. Please welcome to the show, Professor Nature Boy Snowman, Ph.D. Am I saying your name right?
Yes, sir.
All right.
Thank you, Jack, for letting me be here. It's a pleasure to be here to talk about the implications of renewable resources. While it is true that renewable resources such as solar and hydroelectric can help the environment in more ways than one, the natural impact of these methods can't be ignored. Renewable energy, in short, is a very complex double-edged sword.
Would you care to elaborate, Professor Nature Boy?
Yes, of course. Renewable energy threatens wildlife and can harm ecosystems. If we do not act now, ecosystems will disappear.
Well, what kind of evidence can you present to us to enlighten us of this fear?
Well, Jack, all energy sources have some impact on our environment, all the way from fossil fuels to solar and hydroelectric. The main difference between the two is their intermediate noticeability.
How so?
Picture a solar power plant from a modern city. Let's say Hartford, Connecticut. Now picture the size. Such a plant will have to be to accommodate the energy needs of over 100,000 people. Our 1 megawatt solar power plant on average requires about 100,000 square feet, or 2.5 acres according to the U.S. Department of Energy. Hartford, on average, consumes around 100,000 megawatts of electricity according to a study by EcoWatch. Simple math tells us that a solar plant would have to size up to over 250,000 acres. This size can easily disrupt ecosystems across the United States.
But can't you use other forms of renewable energy, like, for example, hydroelectric?
You could, but then you have to deal with another environmental problem.
Well, of course you would. It's just never easy now, is it?
Nope. Ha! When dealing with hydropower, a dam of any size needs several things before it can start turning turbines. A dam needs a reservoir and a river to drain into. To have a functioning dam, the river needs to be at a low elevation in comparison to the reservoir. Major drainage and excavation needs to occur before the concrete can begin to be laid.
And for our listeners out there, this can affect the fish populations. How exactly?
Of course, well, salmon are a unique species of fish. During mating season, they swim upstream to lay their eggs. When the dam is constructed, the migration path of these salmon are completely disrupted, causing a drop in salmon population, and as a result, a drop in species that eat the salmon in the local area.
Oh, wow. That can go dark pretty fast.
You see now why I'm worried.
Now, can you present a solution to such problems?
Well, no. As far as right now, the only fully renewable energy resource is wind. Other resources don't really live up to their expectations.
So, are you saying we should just give up on renewable resources?
Absolutely not. Clean energy is the future of the Earth we need to oversee if we want any hope of our species surviving. What I'm saying is that we need to be careful of where we place our power plants. We can't disrupt entire ecosystems because we may be doing more harm than good.
Well, thank you for those words, Professor, and thank you so much for being on our show.
No problem.
Thought for Your Thoughts will return after these messages from our sponsors.
The Brontosaurus. For millennia, these gentle and graceful giants roamed the earth, grazing off the lush vegetation of their time. Their mere existence transformed the landscape and made a lasting impact on our world. It is that legacy that Dino Oil is proud to continue by using their eons-old dead bone goop to fuel your Honda Odyssey, making it the oldest form of recycling there is. Dino Oil. Embrace the power of bones. Thank you to Dino Oil for sponsoring this episode of Thought for Your Thoughts.
And now please welcome to the show a great researcher who majored in ecology and minored in economics. Please welcome Professor Sharkeisha Flanene from the University of Southern California.
Thank you, Jack. Might I say it is an honor to be on this show. Economic development has become more complex, energy needs have increased greatly.
Thank you, Professor. Now, in your book on renewable resources and their impacts on the Earth, you clearly outline both an economic and environmental benefit to the renewable resources, highlighting points such as environmental preservation and the growth of economies through the conservation of our planetary, quote, living space, unquote, as you defined it. Would you care to elaborate on this?
Of course I would. Renewable energy is only the next best step in right direction for us as a species. It is an undeniable fact that renewable resources improve the quality of life for those around power plants and pollute the air around us as a whole heck of a lot less.
Earlier on this show, we had Professor Snowman, who discussed how placing solar, hydro, or wind plants everywhere will disrupt ecosystems across the world. Would you like to rebuttal?
Why, yes. While it is true that ecosystems can be destroyed by placing clean power plants everywhere, we can minimize the impacts of this by putting ourselves in a more sustainable state of mind. Morocco currently leads Africa in clean energy and has placed their power plants with full conservation in mind in areas barren to most forms of life or non-arable lands.
Well, thank you for that, Professor Flanene. Now, you've explained the environmental impact of renewable energy, but can you tell us and all the listeners out there about the economic benefits that nations can oversee should we switch to a renewable grid?
Indeed, primarily jobs from fossil fuel plants are typically mechanized and capital-intensive in comparison. The renewable energy industry is more labor-intensive. That means that, on average, more jobs are created for each unit of electricity generated from renewable resources than from fossil fuels, growing our economy with a rise in service-based jobs and new population of consumers.
Well, that's really something to consider. Thank you so much for being on our show, Professor Flanene.
Thank you for having me. It was really an honor.
Thought for Your Thoughts will return after one last message from our sponsors.
From fueling America's manufacturing revival to reducing emissions, the employees of ExxonMobil are proud of the work they do to provide energy for America. And now we are proud to sponsor this episode of Thought for Your Thoughts. Today, you can be a part of something bigger than yourself when you apply for a job at ExxonMobil. ExxonMobil, energy lives here. Thank you to ExxonMobil for sponsoring this episode of Thought for Your Thoughts.
Thank you to the professors once again for being on our show, and thank you to our loyal viewers for tuning in. Thought for Your Thoughts will return next week to talk about the implications of space travel and the consequence of space junk. Thank you for listening. This is Jack Spear, signing off.